Hey everybody, this is Perch. We're winding down the year. I hope you're having a great end of the year and things are all coming together for you. I wanted to do a little bit of an analysis that shows a very different picture, but a happy picture. It's the year of happy joy. So wait a minute, it's not that year at all. It's the season. It's not even really the season. We can't go to restaurants. It's terrible actually. But here's some good news about the comic industry. So I showed kind of good news, bad news. You'll see. I can always find rotten parts of the apple. I did the analysis of Civil War II, and I showed what was the surprising picture was not how well the event did. I mean, it did reasonably well. It did fine. Still had a drop, but it did okay. But the chilling effect it had on the rest of Marvel's line. And to be clear, like I said yesterday, there's a lot of other factors that went into this. You cannot blame it all on Civil War II. You absolutely can't. During that time period, 2016, 2017, a lot of things were going on. It was a rough time for the industry, and but at the same time, big companies like Marvel, like DC, when they run events, those are going to be big tentpole things for the industry. So you do also have to admit that a poor performing event or something that does poorly does have a negative effect. So I mean, definitely Civil War II and everything that went around there plays a part in the picture that was comics. People got fierce debates. I got some emails like, it's not fair to blame it on that. It's actually Hickman's fault. It was Secret Wars. Like, okay, sure, there's a lot of factors. But looking just at the numbers, it presented a pretty compelling case. So let's do apples to apples. Let's look at Civil War. So Mark Millar, definitely a guy who's somewhat polarizing in comics. I think what my perspective of him is he knows how to write a blockbuster. So whether you like events or dislike events, he knows the right structure, the right cadence, how to put together a big event that will sell to the mass market. Now, keep in mind, none of what I just said means you have to like it or dislike it. I know some people who are really passionate about the idea that Civil War broke the Marvel Universe. It was a terrible event, and I did the retrospective with Joe Corallo. We found a lot to mock about this event. There's some definite silly things in there, no doubt about it. But this video is not about opinions. It's about data. And so we have, Mark Millar's Civil War II. I'm just going to pronounce his last name differently every single time I say it. Millar's Civil War I. Sorry, that he did. I'm so excited by this video. I got very, very excited. So I intended to put out Saga next, and I've got all those numbers and that stuff all queued up, but I wanted to follow very quickly with the Civil War II with this one because it's a nice companion, and plus it's happy positivity for the end of the year. So Civil War I, as I mentioned yesterday, highest selling event for Marvel in the last 25 years. 260,000 copies of #1 sold. Final issue sold 265, making it the only event where sales fully went up from issue 1. And trade sales remain strongest for Marvel over the last 15 years. Absolutely, all that's true, but that's actually not the big picture. So let's look at it. As we mentioned, it debuts at 260,000 copies with issue 1. It does a predictable event sync for issue #2 a month later at 253,000. It then hops back up to 290,000. And that's where we see that's the high point of kind of this series. Some big things happen. I think the death of Goliath is at that point. But anyway, so this is where retailers and everybody else is fully aware this event is doing quite well. And then it does drop down to 272. We start skipping months. So one of the things that happened with this title is between issue 3, 4, 5, and 6, you started seeing months get skipped. So we definitely had some gaps there, but issue 4 to issue 5 was relatively flat. It drops down briefly under where issue 1 was at 259,000. It ends at 265. So all of this combines to give us a really healthy trend line that's a little bit abnormal because of that spike in issue 2 and then the flat 3 and 4. It causes our trend line to go up higher, a little bit abnormal, but basically it trended from a 260,000 selling book to 272. And this basically was a 5% trend increase from issue 1 to issue 7. And that's significant. Again, that's not something you see, but more importantly, it's not something you see at these numbers. When you're talking about everything is selling over of 250,000 copies for an event, especially in the last 20 years, this just doesn't happen. So the other interesting part about all this is every single issue from issue 1 to issue 7 was ranked #1 for the month. It was the top selling book, basically held that position for 7 months. And what you don't see here, but it does go into the picture we're about to tell, it is a lot of other Marvel books got drug up into that picture. You started seeing New Avengers and other titles that were tie-ins to Civil War also up crowding the top 10. And that's the other thing that was very unique. You can look at any other event over the last 20 years. You will not see this. You will not see every issue hitting #1, not even close to it. Death Metal is not doing that right now, certainly Empire. I mean, you could just go back in line. You do not have the entire series stay at #1. It's unheard of. And, you know, that's an impressive feat in and of itself. So again, overall, that same picture. So Civil War, the first series, had a 5% trend increase from issue 1 to issue 7. Civil War 2 had an overall 41% trend drop from issue 0 to issue 8. And we can't beat up on Civil War 2 too heavily, because if you look at Marvel's events overall, they all kind of have this drop. You have a very strong selling #1, and then they plummet. It's worth noting, and I desperately wanted to put the facts up here on the screen for you, and I could not do it. So I'm reasonably sure Civil War had a few variant covers. From what I can tell, it had certainly less than 10. I think it had less than 5, but that's where it gets really sketchy because there were a lot of reprints and other things that went on. But it had a fairly small amount of variants. Civil War 2, as far as I can tell, had 4 times the variants from Civil War 1. But again, I cannot get, like, nobody can tell me solid mass. just where are the numbers? These things are like roaches. They come out of the walls, and you can't tell how many variants they have. So this is all very interesting. Overall, a success. Clearly a success. We'll look at the trade paperback sales a little bit later, but the interesting thing about Civil War, the first series, is that trade paperback continues to be one of the strongest sellers that Marvel puts out in 2020. So, basically, 14 odd years later, it's still doing very, very strong. So what I did is the same thing I did for Civil War 2. I took a look at titles that were ongoing, and I want to make sure I underline ongoing because Civil War launched a lot of new books. And Civil War 2 did as well. Well, not a lot, but a few. But Civil War 1 definitely launched some big-time books. Things like Mighty Avengers, Thor came out kind of right after this. I'm not counting any of those into this mix. And why? Because all of those books were launching over 100,000 copies. It would definitely skew the number higher. I'm not trying to cheat. So I looked at books that were basically ongoing through this period. And what you see is this chart right here, which doesn't look that impressive. But you see the blue line there below are the titles, the ongoing books that Marvel did from month to month. Okay, judging for, basically ranking us from, May 1st, 2005 through February 1st, 2008. Kind of this entire period before and after Civil War. Now, even from this picture, you can see there's an increase. But watch what happens. I'm going to nuke out Civil War, and I'm going to just basically blow this graph up, which gives a much clearer picture of what we're looking at. And it's at this view, you really see something significant happened with Civil War. And that is, we basically went bumping around 70,000 before Civil War, all the way up to 90,000. It basically gained about 20,000. Look at that climb. As Civil War begins, look at the climb of all the books. Now, granted, they were tying in, and you might go, oh, this happens every event. It doesn't, though. In fact, that was kind of the point of the video yesterday. Civil War 2 didn't do this. Most titles do not do this. Secret Wars, which a lot of people liked from Jonathan Hickman, didn't do this. This doesn't occur where you see the entire line boosted up this amount. And certainly when the event ends, you see the numbers drift back down again. But even there, not much. It's trending to about 85,000, 86, as it goes down. Nowhere near the below 70 numbers they were at prior. So let me come back out again so you can see Civil War there. Again, we can kind of see what happens. If you look at the numbers, just the before and the after. So a year before Civil War, we were at 73,000 on average. I basically took all these titles, I averaged them out. This is what the number we got. The month before Civil War, we were down to 72. So we'd actually lost some ground coming into Civil War. Right as we exited, we were at 90,000. We climbed from 72,000 to 90,000. For the line, of Marvel Comics, but the ongoing line of books. That's a lot of comics, and that's huge. If you think about several of these comics all picking up, on average close to 20,000 sales for all these books across, that actually adds up very quickly to being as significant, right? Frankly, more significant than what Civil War was bringing in, because the whole line is getting stronger. That's an excellent, excellent sign. It was definitely positive for things like Captain America. Of course, it rolled into the death of Captain America. That was probably the highest book, but New Avengers did better. And these are the ongoing books. Forget for a moment the things like Thor, which debuted over 100, Mighty Avengers over 100, The Initiative, all these kinds of books that rolled out, which were doing extremely well. But even 12 months after, and this is why it's important, we didn't dip. We're still at 87. We're still about 15,000 higher than what it was the 12 months before. It's very, very significant. So what does all this mean? During Civil War, during that event, Marvel titles had a 31% trend increase. So 31% increase. And for all these numbers videos I do, I don't use the word trend increase a lot. It is a business that naturally atrophies over time. 31% trend increase is incredible. And if you look at the entire run, we're still talking about a 27% increase. And that's a huge deal. If you throw in the event that followed right afterward, World War Hulk, it started at 178,000, went down to 145,000. Obviously a much smaller event, 5 issues, not nearly as significant as Civil War and Secret Invasion would come after. But even here, kind of comparing apples to apples with what happened with Civil War II, and then it was followed up by AVX. Sorry, not AVX, what am I saying? IVX, Inhumans versus X-Men. You see just so much more strength in what was doing to everything in the line. So overall, again, to remind you, this is what happened with Civil War. Same picture. This is what happened. Civil War while that was going on, from the 12 months before to the 12 months after, we had a 41% trend drop. So if we put both of these on the screen right next to each other, over the course of Civil War, if we look 12 months before, 12 months after, 31% growth. We look at Civil War II, same time metric, 41% drop. I'm just saying, again, there were other factors? Yes, other factors for sure. But, I mean, this is a picture. I didn't mention this yesterday in the video, but it is one of those factors, right about, several months after Civil War II ended and these numbers were really coming in, Marvel did part ways with Axel Alonso. It's hard not to draw at least some conclusion that he was a bit of the fall guy from this. Bendis leaves to go to to go to DC. I mean, there's some things that you can kind of draw from all this. So a couple disclaimers, like I said, as I mentioned before, this doesn't take into effect the new books Marvel launched, like Thor, Mighty Avengers, others. If you factor that in, just back of the napkin math, you get right under 40% for the line if you factor in these new books, which is insane. Here's some perspective that will make you laugh. Moon Knight number 8, which came out right after, about 2 months after Civil War ended, it sold 77,385 copies. Moon Knight number 8, not number 1, but Moon Knight number 8. If that same book came out in March of 2020, that would have made it one of the top 5 comics for the industry, Marvel, DC, Image, everything. Just to put it in perspective where things have come in the last 14 years or so. It's to be noted, because I beat up on Marvel and DC and everybody a lot on marketing. Marvel did a very effective job marketing this event. The branding was consistent. It was very solid. Retail shops are given a lot of free material to promote, and it was done very well. And during this course, Marvel achieved several of their best months to date since their exclusive Diamond relationship began. I've said I'd mention trade paperbacks. It's not as interesting of a graph. Basically, when it debuted, the Civil War trade paperback sold 19,196 copies in its debut month. But throughout 2017, which is after the event and when all the trades were landing, the graphic novel sales were up nearly 2/3 over the previous year. And largely, this was due to Civil War. You had almost all the books. I mean, you had stuff like Fantastic Four and the Avengers and Spider-Man all debuting over 10,000 copies in their first month. And today, You can go to Amazon book lists, you can go to Diamond, you can go everywhere else, and Civil War remains on top selling charts today. 14 years later, it's still, I guess 13 years for the trade, still doing well. So, what's the conclusion here? Well, Mark Millar can sell comics. That's the conclusion. He definitely has a lot of bragging rights. If you think about why he's able to score the deal with Netflix and everything else, I mean, this is why he brought numbers, not just for his book, but for Marvel. And again, love him, hate him. You can certainly dislike the event. You can absolutely have the opinion that it broke the Marvel universe, did lots of bad things. Totally fair. But in terms of sales, this was the kind of success story that the comic industry loves and needs and should have more of. And you put it in contrast to what's happening today. You can set your personal opinions about the title aside, and you can say this is what success looks like. And just wish we saw more of it. So anyway, interesting bit of analysis, apples to apples. Yes, Saga is coming up probably Christmas Eve. I think that will hit. Nice little thing. That's another very different picture. And then I have White Knight coming after that, which is also a very different picture. So we'll kind of close out the year with a bunch of happy things. And then, yes, a lot of you have been asking for everything. I've been capturing them all. I will hit the numbers. When you ask for things like, show me all of what Hickman did for Avengers, or, show me the entire run of Justice League for 20 years. It's like, it takes a while. It's fun times. I'm going to dip into the 90s, do Spawn, do some of these others. I want to thank all the people who've supported certainly this channel, but also this type of video. It's fun for me. This is nerding out on some numbers. I enjoy it. I appreciate it. Yes, thank you to Zach, who pointed a lot of people here over the Ms. Marvel numbers, and I'm just glad to get this stuff out here. It paints a picture that is data. And whether you like the data or not, because I'll tell you, like with the Thor video, there's plenty of people who say the Jane Foster thing was a failure from day one. It was not. That series, that first 8 issues or whatever of Jane Foster Thor sold better than Odin's Son Thor and had better numbers overall. It was a success. So you don't always kind of get what you want when you see this, but this is data. And of course, you like what you like. This data doesn't tell you have to like something. You don't have to go out and like Civil War now. It's just you should like what it did for the financials, but that's a different story. And if you're not an investor in Marvel, you may not care about that either. Anyway, I hope everybody liked this. Throw a like to the video if you liked it. I appreciate it. Subscribe. As always, your comments are welcome. Your emails. I'm on Twitter for whatever that's worth, and everything else. And most importantly, have a great holiday. Thanks for listening.